Your mother-in-law still adores your husband's ex, so much so that she considers her part of the family. But when you got pregnant, your ex suddenly announced she was pregnant with him too. And that's when I realized this isn't family, it's a trap. And I'm going to get out of it, even if it means destroying everything. My name's Elise, 31 years old, and I swear my mother-in-law, Linda, made it her personal mission to erase me from existence the moment I married her son, Nathan. It started small, little jabs that could almost pass as jokes. Juliana used to bake Nathan's favorite pie just right, you'll get there eventually. Or, Juliana always knew how to calm Nathan down when he was stressed. Juliana, Nathan's ex from college, was practically a ghost living in our marriage. Except Linda kept resurrecting her every damn weekend. The first time I met Juliana in person, Linda orchestrated it. She invited us for family dinner, and conveniently forgot to mention Juliana would be there. I walked into that house with a bottle of wine and a smile, and found Juliana already at the stove, wearing an apron-embroidered family favorite. Linda beamed like she just reunited long-lost lovers. Nathan froze. I laughed nervously, like a fool trying to keep peace in enemy territory. Juliana hugged Nathan, hugged for a full 60 seconds while Linda sighed dramatically about how nice it was to see them together again. When I tried to help set the table, Linda waved me off. Juliana knows where everything is, dear. That night, I sat at the dinner table while Linda and Juliana recited a greatest hits reel of Nathan's past. Every story had me edited out, like I was watching a movie about the man I married but with the wrong lead actress. When Juliana casually dropped that she still had a key to Linda's house, I saw red. Nathan looked mortified, but Linda just chuckled. Oh, I never asked for it back. She's family. I told Nathan afterward that this wasn't normal. He said Linda just had trouble letting go. But trouble letting go doesn't explain the framed photo of Juliana still sitting on Linda's mantel beside their family portraits. It doesn't explain the way she called Juliana sweetheart, while calling me dear like it was an insult. Then came the first real slap in the face, our engagement party. Linda threw it at her house, insisted on handling everything. I showed up early to help, and Juliana was already there, wearing a dress that looked suspiciously bridal. She was arranging the food, greeting guests like she owned the place. Linda floated behind her, whispering instructions like a proud director. When Juliana stood up during toast and gave a speech about growing up with Nathan, everyone clapped. Linda teared up, and when she said, I'll always love you both, Linda actually filmed it. That night, I told Nathan point blank, your mother's trying to replace me with your ex. He said I was being dramatic, maybe I was. But deep down, I knew something darker was forming behind that smile of Linda's. Something that didn't want me in Nathan's life at all. And she wasn't done yet, not even close. A month after that disastrous engagement party, I started noticing how Linda's obsession with Juliana wasn't just nostalgia, it was a performance. She needed people to see her as the perfect mother with the perfect daughter. And if I had to be humiliated to keep that image alive, she didn't hesitate. It was Nathan's birthday when she crossed another line. We showed up with a cake I'd spent half the night making, triple chocolate, his favorite. And there was Juliana again, standing in the kitchen like it was her own home. She'd baked her version too. Linda clapped her hands together and said, oh, how fun. A little cake competition. Juliana laughed, all fake modesty. Well, I know how Nathan likes it extra moist, I remember. Everyone laughed except Nathan, who looked like he wanted to disappear. Linda made a show of tasting both cakes, then declared Juliana's the winner, saying mine was a bit dry. She even made me pack up my cake for leftovers. I sat there smiling with my cheeks burning so bad I could feel my pulse in them. That night, Nathan apologized, but still tried to smooth it over. Mom doesn't mean harm, Elise. But she did. She knew exactly what she was doing, turning every family moment into a stage where Juliana and I competed for her approval. Then, a few weeks later, we found out Linda had been giving Juliana access to things she shouldn't have. Nathan came home fuming. Juliana had texted him about a work project he hadn't mentioned to anyone.
Hey guys, real quick before we keep going, don't forget to sub and drop a like if you're enjoying the story. Thank you very much. Enjoy watching.
How the hell did she even know about this? He said, pacing. Turns out Linda had been forwarding Juliana and Nathan's LinkedIn updates, photos, from our Facebook, even our house address, in case she wanted to send a card. I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat at our kitchen table with my laptop and deleted every trace of Linda from our social media. Nathan didn't stop me. For the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Fear. Not of me, but of the truth he'd been refusing to face. His mother was crossing into dangerous territory. Still, Linda found new ways to crawl back in. She invited us to her housewarming dinner after redoing the guest room. I thought maybe she was trying to make peace. But when we arrived, she led us upstairs proudly and showed us a room decorated in pale blue and beige. On the nightstand was a framed photo of Juliana and Nathan from college. This was always your room, dear, Linda said sweetly to Juliana, who was standing right there beside us, smiling like a ghost resurrected. I felt my stomach drop. That wasn't a guest room. It was a shrine. Nathan finally snapped that night. He told Linda the photos had to go, the keys needed to be returned, and Juliana was no longer welcome at family events. Linda just stared at him, stunned, then turned her gaze on me with something cold and hateful behind her eyes. You're turning my son against me, she whispered. That was the first time I felt genuinely afraid of her. Because it wasn't jealousy anymore. It was war. After that night, the shrine room, the fight, Linda's whispered threat, Nathan went low contact with his mom for the first time in his life. It didn't last. 2 weeks later, she accidentally showed up at our house. I heard the knock while I was folding laundry and opened the door to find her holding a casserole like some sitcom mother. "I just missed my son," she said, smiling tight. Nathan was at work. She didn't even pretend she came to see me. I tried to be polite, but when I told her Nathan wasn't home, she brushed past me and set the dish on our counter anyway. Then she started walking through our house, looking at our photos, like she was inspecting a crime scene. "You've redecorated," she murmured, eyes landing on a wedding photo of me and Nathan. Her lips twitched. "You moved that painting. Juliana used to love it here." I took the casserole dish, walked it straight to the trash, and said evenly, "Please don't come here uninvited again." Her smile dropped like a mask sliding off. "You think you can keep me from my son?" she hissed. "I made him. You're temporary." That was when I realized she'd been smiling through her teeth all these years because she genuinely believed she owned him. Nathan came home to find me shaking on the couch. When I told him what happened, something in his expression hardened. He changed our locks that night, but Linda wasn't finished. She started her next attack where she could humiliate me publicly. At Nathan's cousin's wedding, Linda cornered us during the reception. Juliana was there, of course, standing by the bar in a shimmering gold dress. I later found out Linda had told the bride to invite her for old times' sake. We tried to avoid them, but halfway through dinner, Linda clinked her glass and stood up for a toast. "To Juliana," she said loudly, who was part of this family long before Elise came along. The entire table went silent. Juliana's smile faltered, but she didn't stop her. I stood up so fast my chair screeched. "To boundaries," I said, raising my glass, "because every healthy family needs them." Then I walked out, heart pounding, hands shaking. Nathan followed, apologizing, angry, humiliated. I could see it finally sinking in, that his mother wasn't just bad at letting go, she was delusional. A week later, I missed my period. The test came back positive. I told Nathan in our kitchen, hands trembling, and for a few precious hours, everything felt right again. He cried, held me, said this was the start of our real family. Then his phone buzzed, a text from Linda. "I heard the news. Juliana will be so happy for you both." That was the moment I knew. She wasn't done. She was about to weaponize my pregnancy. The pregnancy announcement changed everything, not in the way I hoped. Nathan wanted to tell his parents himself. So we went to Linda's house for dinner a week later. I was nervous but hopeful, clutching my ultrasound photo in a little envelope. Maybe, I thought, this would finally melt whatever icy resentment she had toward me. Maybe a grandchild would heal things. She opened the door, eyes bright, smile wide. Too wide. "Oh, I already know," she said, voice syrupy sweet. "Juliana told me." That sentence hit me like a slap. Before I could even process it, Juliana stepped out from the kitchen, wearing one of Linda's aprons, and holding a tray of hors d'oeuvres like it was her home. I felt the air leave my lungs. Linda was already chattering about how exciting it was that Nathan would be a father. Then, in the same breath, she looked at me and said, "Pregnancy can be difficult, Elise. Don't stress yourself too much. Juliana can help if you need support." That night ended in shouting. Nathan tried to stay calm, but when Linda referred to Juliana as family, he snapped. He told his mother she was crossing every line imaginable, that she needed to back off and stop involving Juliana in our lives. Linda went pale, then red, then started crying hysterically. "You're ungrateful," she screamed. "I've done everything for you, and this is how you repay me? Throwing me away for her?" When she said her, she didn't even look at me. She looked past me like I was furniture blocking her view of her son. We left in silence. I cried the entire drive home, clutching my stomach like I could shield the baby from all this poison. For a while, things were quiet. Too quiet. Nathan blocked Linda's number for a few days, but then she emailed him. The subject line read, "You're making a mistake." The body said, "I'll prove it." I didn't know what that meant until 2 weeks later, when Nathan's father called. His voice trembled as he said, "Linda says Juliana's pregnant. She insists Nathan's the father." My whole body went cold. Nathan went completely still beside me, staring at the wall like it had swallowed him. I demanded proof right then. Dates, messages, something. Nathan swore up and down that he hadn't seen Juliana alone in years. I believed him, or wanted to, but the timing was too perfect. Linda had found the ultimate weapon. By midnight, we'd gone through Nathan's phone, his location history, his credit card statements, everything. There was nothing connecting him to Juliana. No messages, no meetings, nothing. But that didn't stop the sickness twisting in my chest, because Linda didn't need evidence to destroy us. She just needed people to believe her, and she knew exactly how to make that happen. The next morning felt like waking up inside a nightmare that kept rewriting itself. Nathan's father kept calling, repeating the same thing over and over. Linda swore Juliana was pregnant, and that Nathan needed to step up. Every word made my stomach twist harder. Nathan called his mother. I sat beside him, listening to her voice crackle through the speakerphone, thick with fake tears. "She's devastated," Linda said. "You need to do the right thing, Nathan. She's carrying your baby." He cut her off. "Not until there's proof. A paternity test, medical records, something." That's when Linda's tone changed, her sweetness melting into venom. "You've changed," she spat. "Ever since Elise came along, you've turned cruel. You used to be kind. You used to care. I snatched the phone and said, "We're not talking about this again until Juliana proves she's pregnant." Linda started screaming so loudly the speaker cracked. "You're jealous. You've always been jealous of her. You can't stand that Nathan loved someone before you." I hung up. My hand shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Nathan sat there in stunned silence for a long time, staring at nothing. That night, I barely slept. My pulse pounded so violently I could feel it in my throat. Every creak in the house made me jump. I couldn't stop picturing Juliana's smug face, or Linda whispering lies into phones, twisting reality into whatever she wanted it to be. When morning came, I made a decision. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for proof. I was going to find it. I called my sister, Coraline, a paralegal who could smell a lie from a mile away. She flew in that same afternoon. Within hours, she had Nathan's phone, laptop, credit card statements, everything spread across our dining table, like an investigation scene. I watched her cross-check dates and addresses, tapping her pen rhythmically, while Nathan answered her questions. By evening, Coraline looked up and said flatly, "There's no way he had time to see Juliana. Every day's accounted for." Her calm logic cut through the panic fog in my head. "Then it's all a lie," I whispered. "I see they're setting us up." Nathan nodded, voice low. "And if Mom's behind this?" "She is," Coraline interrupted. "You know she is." That's when the rage started to outweigh the fear. I opened my laptop and began documenting everything. Texts, calls, messages, times, screenshots. If Linda wanted war, I was going to make sure she lost it publicly. But Linda wasn't going to go down quietly. The next day, she took the battle online. She posted a long Facebook status about being betrayed by the people you love most, about ungrateful children and innocent girls being slandered. She never used our names, but anyone who knew us could read between the lines. By the end of the day, the comments section had turned into a family brawl, half of them pitying poor Juliana, the other half demanding to know the truth. And I decided right then that if Linda wanted an audience, I'd give her one. The sweet revenge was about to begin. Update, holy hell, since I posted about the fake pregnancy, my inbox has been a war zone. Strangers sending support, old family friends asking if we're okay, people DMing receipts of things Linda said at brunches 12 years ago, like it's evidence in a trial. Coraline keeps reading me the crazier ones between sips of coffee. Someone said Linda cried to them about Juliana last month. An aunt remembers Juliana staying at their lake house. People are outraged and also, terrifyingly, curious. I'm grateful and also exhausted. The internet is a flashlight and a blowtorch at the same time. Right after that, Coraline and I hit the next phase, digging for receipts. We weren't going to hope anyone else would prove this for us. We made a list: bank statements, text threads, emails, calendar entries, photos, anything that showed coordination. Nathan gave us access to his phone and accounts with a kind of hollow calm that made my chest ache, like a man finally handing over the last of his armor. Coraline moved like a force of nature. She subpoenaed nothing. We weren't there yet. She just cross-referenced like a demon the dates Linda called, small ATM withdrawals from Linda's account, Venmo transfers that had cryptic one-word notes, a pattern of regular cash flows to Juliana's account that coincided with the weeks she started showing up at family events. Then she found it. Text threads between Linda and Juliana from months before Thanksgiving. The messages were clinical, calculating. "Timing is everything," one read. "Say you're scared. If he doubts, say you're pregnant." Linda's voice was in it. GIFs, heart emojis. "You're doing the right thing." We printed everything. We photographed screens. We filled folders until the dining room looked like a mini prosecutorial office. The sweet revenge started as something small and surgical, not dramatic fireworks. Nathan wrote one email, short, clean, and devastating, and forwarded Juliana's confession to every single contact on the family chain: cousins, aunts, the church board, the little PTA list Linda used to control. The subject line was clinical. Evidence attached, timeline, and admissions regarding false pregnancy claim. He hit send, and the room hummed with our own phones buzzing like angry bees. The fallout was immediate. Group chats exploded. Some relatives called sobbing apologies. Others called Linda, demanding answers. Linda's carefully curated image, the martyr mother who only wanted happiness for her son, began to fray. She called Nathan 11 times in 10 minutes. On the 11th call, she stood on our porch, screaming like a lunatic, tearing up the welcome mat, hurling her casserole onto the lawn, shoving a framed wedding photo, face down, into the gravel so hard the glass spiderwebbed. I watched from the window, hands clenched, so tight my nails hurt. Then came the threats, a lawyer's letter from Juliana's camp claiming defamation. Coraline had expected it and had already scanned Juliana's email admitting the deception, the line-by-line confession she'd sent in a panic once Linda pushed too far. We forwarded that to our lawyer. His voice on speaker was calm and the best kind of sharp. "You've got enough here to force their hand. Don't respond publicly. Let them try. We file first if they do." Linda's public meltdown accelerated the family split. Some people recoiled in shock and embarrassment. Others tried to justify her as a lonely old woman who'd made a terrible mistake. Nathan's father finally called, sounded hollow and raw, and said he'd found bank statements too. He was coming over tomorrow. I couldn't sleep. The house felt like a mouth with too many teeth. Sweet Revenge, I learned, wasn't about theatrics. It was documentation, timing, and taking away an abuser's stage, and it had rattled Linda to her core, but it hadn't broken her. Not yet. When Nathan's dad walked through our front door, he looked 10 years older in 1 hour. He'd been awake all night, his suit wrinkled like he'd been pacing, and he carried a manila envelope so fat it felt like a Bible. He sat down, put the envelope on the coffee table, and didn't even say hello. He just opened it. Bank statements, copies of Venmo transfers, photos of receipts. He pushed one across to Nathan, highlighted lines like a trail. I found every transfer, he said, voice flat. Small amounts at first, 50, 100, then it's 500, then more. It adds up. He tapped an amount with his finger until I could read it. 42,750. My stomach dropped through my feet. Then he showed us the texts. They weren't casual messages, they were scripts. If he doubts, say you're scared. Talk about how fragile you feel. Make him jealous, but not obvious. Linda's name in every thread, encouraging, arranging, egging Juliana on. There was one line where Linda literally wrote, "Get an ultrasound pic. I'll make sure people believe it." I felt my mouth go dry, then sour. The house smelled faintly of cleaning products and something colder, betrayal. Nathan read like someone watching a slow-motion train wreck. His hands trembled as he flipped through a printout where Linda had bragged about how she'd always known she could get him back. I thought he'd faint. He didn't. He stood up, walked to the window, and just stared at the street as if looking for the life he'd lost. Nathan's dad said he'd confronted Linda last night. She broke down at first, then smoothed it over with apologies. But he'd kept digging, bank accounts, credit card statements, the Venmo notes, and it all pointed to the same thing. A conspiracy built out of longing and money. He looked at us and said, "I called my lawyer. I'm moving out. I can't live with this. I can't be married to someone who planned to wreck her own son's life." He'd filed for separation that morning. He didn't ask our permission. He just needed air out of a room that had been suffocating him for years. The physical escalation followed like a bad echo. That afternoon, someone keyed Nathan's truck down the driver's side while it was parked at his office. The tires were slashed. The neighbor called to say our mailbox had been smashed open and filled with baby-themed pamphlets covered in smear letters. Liar and homewrecker, scrawled in red marker. On the porch, where Linda had once stood and pounded the door, someone had thrown our wedding frame, face down, into the gravel, the glass spiderwebbed. It looked like an animal had attacked our front yard, but it had been human hands. I called the police while Nathan took pictures. Coraline told me to breathe, and my legs felt like an accordion, collapsing and folding in on themselves. "She's escalating," Nathan said quietly. "She wants us scared." My voice came out thinner than I felt. "She wants you to run back to her." We went to see our lawyer that afternoon. He was methodical in a way that made me grateful. Forms, affidavits, a police report number. "We file for a temporary restraining order today," he said. "You'll need to document everything. Texts, calls, photos of the damage. The judge will want a pattern." Samuel, he'd been on voicemail 2 hours earlier, typed up the petition and slid it across his desk like it was a life preserver. While we were at the courthouse, news spread through the family like spilled gasoline. Linda called Nathan 60 times and then started calling his father incessantly, begging, pleading, alternating between apologies and bluster. The sheriff showed up at her house later that night with a copy of the temporary order because she'd stood on our sidewalk and screamed until a neighbor called 911. She tore up a ceramic elephant on the porch when the deputy handed her the paperwork, pieces flying like a small broken constellation. The judge signed the temporary restraining order within 24 hours, 500 feet, no contact, no electronic harassment. It felt like exhaling into a mask after a panic attack. There was legalese, stamps, and a weight lifted, but the relief was thin and paper thin. Linda didn't dissolve into regret. She doubled down online, posts about betrayal, dramatic photos of her empty kitchen, and friends piling on with sympathetic hearts. Some relatives defended her in private messages, their loyalty a small, stubborn burn in my inbox. That night, Nathan sat on the edge of our bed and read the restraining order aloud like a prayer. He reached for my hand and stopped himself, then folded his fingers around my knuckles instead. "I should have seen it sooner," he whispered. The confession wasn't a plea for absolution so much as the honest breaking down of a man discovering he'd been raised to doubt himself. He was mourning his mother's betrayal and the family he'd thought he had. I lay awake thinking about the baby and the smashed frame and the way my mother-in-law had tried to redraw the map of our lives. We had legal protection now. We had proof. We had Nathan finally in my corner instead of folded toward his mother. But we had scars on our car, on the lawn, on our privacy, and a constant low ache that only time and quiet, consistent care could heal. Outside, a streetlight hummed. Inside, our phones were quieter, because the law made them so. The house felt like a battleground that had been marked and surveyed. We'd won a measure of safety. The war, I knew, wasn't over. The weeks after the restraining order felt unreal, like someone had pressed pause on the chaos, but the sound was still echoing. Nathan's phone stayed blessedly silent. No calls, no texts, no sobbing voicemails from Linda. The house was calm, almost too calm. But calm doesn't mean safe, it means waiting to see what the fallout will be. Nathan's father visited a week later. He looked calmer too, but sad in a different way, like he'd finally accepted what kind of person he'd been married to. Over coffee, he told us that Linda had started therapy, court ordered after the restraining order, but she spent the sessions blaming everyone else, me, Nathan, even him. She's rewriting history, he said, rubbing his temples. She says you manipulated her son. She says Juliana was her only real family. Nathan's hands tightened around his mug, but his voice stayed even. She lost her family the day she chose to lie about a child, he said. His father nodded, eyes glassy. That's why I filed for divorce last week. That was the moment something inside me unclenched. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was closure creeping in through the cracks. Nathan and I started therapy too. Our counselor, Lucy, was the first person who really made Nathan see it. How his mother's manipulation had trained him since childhood to question his own perceptions. How every argument between us had been shaped by Linda's voice, whispering guilt into his head. I watched him cry for the first time since the night this all began. He said he'd failed me by letting his mother poison our life for years. I told him he hadn't failed. He'd been conditioned. And now, finally, he was breaking free. Then life somehow began to rebuild itself. My pregnancy stabilized. My blood pressure went down. Violet came over every day with snacks and soft blankets, insisting I rest. Coraline kept handling paperwork, like a guardian angel with legal credentials. Nathan took care of everything else, the house, the errands, the nursery. He'd hum to my belly while painting soft, yellow walls. Tell our daughter she was coming into a family that chose peace. When Rose was born, 7 pounds, perfect, pink and furious at the world, I cried harder than I ever had. Nathan held her like he was holding proof that love could survive even the worst kind of betrayal. His father came to the hospital, careful, respectful, whispering promises that this baby would never grow up under the shadow of manipulation. Linda wasn't there. By law, she couldn't be. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about that. I felt free. Months passed. Juliana moved out of state. Nathan's father finalized the divorce. We built new boundaries, real ones this time. No more family dinners drenched in tension. No more ghostly exes haunting our milestones. Just us, our daughter, and the small circle of people who never once tried to control our story. One night, Nathan and I sat on the porch after putting Rose to sleep. The air was warm and still. He reached for my hand and said quietly, "You know what the worst part is? I thought cutting her out would break me. But it's the first time I've ever felt whole." I leaned into him, feeling our daughter's tiny cries echo faintly through the monitor inside, and said, "That's because we built this life ourselves. No more ghosts. No more games." The porch light flickered gently above us, and I realized that the house finally felt like home. Not a battlefield, not a hiding place. Just home. And somewhere out there, maybe Linda was still rewriting her version of the story. But it didn't matter anymore. Because this time, the ending was mine.